2015, 2016, you're serving probably 500 customers in a day.
A lot more than that. I mean, those are really hard days and hard hours, but you didn't feel it. I worked at some really incredible places, and I've never felt energy ever like in those 1,300 square feet.
You know, restaurants to me are just four walls and stuff. The people actually breathe the life and personality into those places. You could go to a restaurant and you could have the meal of your life. And if you have poor service, you're probably not going to go back.
Nashville has become a food mecca. So what are your thoughts on these hospitality groups coming into this gold mine of this mecca?
To me, that says we need to continue to make sure our focus is on making sure what we're doing is the best.
The reality of it is we want Nashville to be the best food city in the world. If you're going to come into Nashville, make it awesome. And Nashville will embrace you.
Hello and welcome to the Explore Nash podcast. We thank you for taking the time to listen or watch this show wherever you're watching or listening to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by our software. That's a software that lives on an Apple Wallet or Google Pay. It's called Go Explore. This is a loyalty tailored platform for you as a small operator to build, to be able to have customer retention and also acquire new customers. You can send push notifications through our system without having to have an app. Go to goexplore.io to learn more. Today we are talking about French food. We're talking about Nashville restaurant culture. We're going to talk a lot about food and an upcoming event that both of these people are hosting together as a collaboration. So joining us today is the executive chef of Hattie B's, Brian, and the culinary director for strategic hospitality, Andy. Andy is also one of the former owners of a Nashville staple, Josephine. We'll talk about that story for a little bit too. So guys, welcome to the Explore Nash podcast. Let's just get into food quickly. You guys are hosting an event very soon. That's a collaboration for Restaurant Week that Visit Music City hosts. What is this event and where can people purchase some tickets? And then we'll get into your stories of the culinary journeys that you guys have went on.
Yeah, so this is an incredible benefit dinner that I had the opportunity to do with Andy. Very cool. It's called Table 54. It's an incredible benefit, and I don't know the ticket link off the top of my head, but I'm sure we can put it like right there or right there.
It'll be in the bio.
There you go.
Yeah.
In the bio. So tickets are still available, but going fast. So don't sleep on it. It's a wonderful event to help raise money, and in this case, all around a menu. Built around Table 54, which kind of is throwing back to the classic food of New York in the 70s. So an area that Andy and I were really excited to be able to jump into, and one that I certainly don't work in very much, but that has a special place for both of us. So Andy, you want to talk a little bit about the charity component?
Yeah, the charity, the Big Table is where the money's going to. A really great charity that works specifically with hospitality folks. So we're happy to be working with them, but even happier, I think, to be working together.
Yes.
Is this your first collaboration?
Yes.
So
and won't be the last.
It won't be the last. So you said New York 70s type dining. What can somebody expect for that? Because when I think of New York 70s dining, I'm not really familiar with that genre or era of food. I assume it was some type of pizza and some type of Italian food. But I looked at the menu for this event, and it was more French-inspired, French-driven. Couldn't pronounce any of the names of the food. So walk me through the menu and what somebody can expect at this event.
Well, so we were kind of fortunate to have a great template to start with, right? Table 54 and the way that they dress the room and set the room and approach the event already has this very Studio 54 feel. It already kind of had a time and a place in the 70s in New York. And so Andy and I
was Studio 54 the studio that NBC broadcasted out of?
A different studio.
Okay.
I think Studio 54 is where a lot of drugs were broadcast from.
Yeah, it had less to do with food. And more about appetite reduction. But so we were playing with the idea of like the big, fanciful, wide lapel food of that time, and letting that kind of guide the menu creative. But I feel really grateful in the sense that Andy let me take a little bit of liberty with it because as we were playing in the menu, one of my most meaningful mentors, a chef named Andre Saltner, during my time in New York, who was the founder of an amazing French restaurant in New York called Lutèce, passed away recently. And so all of the memories of the time I spent with him came flooding back, and the things that were important to him and that he taught me. And certainly, if you think about what was incredible in the 70s in New York, there were a lot of people doing a lot of great things, but Chef Saltner and Lutece were right there still at the forefront of it after over 10 years in business already at that point. So it's a real thrill.
Is he one of like the New York chefs that took the farm to table concept of what we know today to reality?
No, he was one of the guys who really brought a classical French approach. I mean, a very, very hyper classical, no frills. You get out what you put in. We're going to treat these things as properly as we can, and we're going to spend as much time in the dining room with the guests as we can doing it. And he applied incredible precision and French technique to that menu, but he also approached service in such an enlightened, loving, up close and personal way. And with 54 guests in the room for table 54, we're thrilled to be able to do the same thing. And so a lot of the menu took inspiration from some of the dishes that were some of his best at Lutece at that time, a couple very specifically, and then a couple more inspired by what you would have found on the menu then. And then also some local flavor and some things that are really neat that Andy and I brought to this.
So for the event, it's a prefix menu.
Yep.
Give us or give me like a description of an entree. Like, how would you describe the entree? How would you describe an appetizer? Like the dessert. Walk me through that experience and the taste I should expect.
Should we tell them about the dessert? I mean, or should we tease it a little bit?
Yeah, and there's a little bit of like secrets and surprises in here because so much of dining in New York in the 70s was surprise in theater.
Is like the entree like a base of chicken, or is it a base of like I only say that because of Hattie bees.
I can appreciate that, but no. There will be now there is a little chicken in early on in this menu in a way that he would have done really well, but no, there's no hot fried chicken on this one. We're really trying to be as appropriate to the time as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the menu, like to me, the 70s in New York it's all of the Le and La restaurants. It was like La Côte Basque and feel free to roast me in the comment section, but I'm pretty sure that was an outgrowth from the World's Fair.
Yes.
All these French chefs came to New York, the World's Fair, and then they stayed, and the great restaurants and so all of this sort of predates even farm to table. It was really the beginning of serious classical, like tall white hat French cuisine in America. And so and when Brian sent over the first iteration, I was just like, first thought was I just want to sit and eat this whole menu. Like it's right in my wheelhouse. But I think there are flavors and techniques and a style of dining that, food is so much like fashion. Things go in, which by the way, sweet.
Thank you.
Hot chicken shirt.
Thank you.
Things go in and out of fashion, but this particular style of dining where it was an event, you had a table for the night.
Oh, for the whole night. Okay.
So we're able to recreate that to the best of our abilities here, but also shedding anything like we're literally putting the tall white hats on. So no, I don't think there are any hot chicken references. There might be a cheeky sort of post Josephine reference in it, but this is straight ahead what we feel like if I hadn't been an infant through most of the 70s, what that would have been like.
So both of you are classically French trained. Brian, I know you were trained in New York. Andy, where was your training? Was it the same school or different schools?
I went to CIA.
Yeah, I went to French Culinary Institute, or that's what it was called at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, not the Langley one. I went to the one in New York.
I grew up in upstate, so when everyone says CIA, I know it's Culinary Institute of America, so I understand what it is. Most people may not understand what that is. I've been a part of conversations over the last couple years of trying to get a campus for CIA here, which I think would kill because of the rise of the culinary scene in Nashville. So let's get to that story. You can get tickets for that event in the bio below. So both of you are classically trained in New York for French food. What's the difference between a French culinary experience and an American experience? Americana type food. We'll get into like some food science for a little bit.
I mean, there's a lot of Americana is such a melting pot in terms of the culinary anthropology of it. There's a lot. I mean, if you trace those roots back, there's plenty of French in there via many conduits.
Creole. I don't know,
for me, what we took away was just good in, good out, and attention to detail and precision and care for your craft. And I think those same attributes can be found all over the place. There's not as much siloing when it comes to culinary anthropology as you might like to think, at least in my opinion. So there's probably more overlap than there is distinction.
Okay.
You could approach French or what do you Southern food, which has a lot of shared roots, in a sloppy way or a precise way. I think the things that probably he and I both learned were more about the precision and being able to understand the progressive benchmarks along the way to make the correct adjustments.
Yeah, it's just
as much as anything.
It's building a house. It's just what type of what type of wood do you have? So in France it's going to be ingredient X, but in the United States we might choose to explore the other. But the basic foundation of building the house, I think that's why so many great culinary schools are built on the foundation of French cuisine. So you can learn all of those techniques and then you can branch out. So the difference between French and American, I think probably has more to do with what ingredient we tend to lean into as opposed to the actual foundations and building blocks of a type of Western cuisine. When you start to move into other parts of the globe, it's way different. But in terms of Western cuisines, I think that's probably the big thing is the ingredient that you lean into.
Would you both, with both of you guys going to culinary school, would you give that as a recommendation to somebody that wants to get into the culinary world?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Why not? Because can you learn working in kitchens better than you can at school?
Yeah, and especially now in the United States. I think it was a different story 30 years ago. I mean, when I was coming up, the chef actually approached me and said, if you want to go any further in the kitchen, you need a degree.
Okay.
So then I just went and dialed up on AOL where should I go get a culinary degree? Where's the best place in the country? Now I think that it makes a lot of sense. And I didn't get into it until I was a little older. I didn't do it right out of high school. Now there are so many great chefs in so many great cities that it's really easy to walk in. You find the best restaurant in your town, go to the back door, knock on it, and say, I want to wash dishes. And get in that way.
And work your way up.
And then go to that chef, and they're going to recognize, if you're with the right chef, they're going to recognize when it's time for you to go. And then they're going to find that place, because all they're doing is strengthening the roots of their family tree. Mm-hmm. They're going to find the next place for you to go. They're going to make the call for you to go to the next bigger city to go and learn there. The problem we run into is you go to culinary school and you're saddled with $70,000 worth of debt for 18 months of school. You're not sponsored by any culinary school, are you?
No.
Okay, good. You're saddled with all this debt, whereas if you go in and you could get into culinary school and very quickly decide, this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot easier to do that when you're working as a dishwasher or when you're shelling fava beans and just be like, listen, guys, I think maybe I shouldn't be doing this. You've been getting paid to learn as opposed to paying in to learn. I'm not sure. I mean, I can't point to a situation that I would have learned in culinary school that I didn't learn just getting thrown in on the job.
Do you feel, I know it's a little bit different with you because you've operated as well. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like your experience at a culinary school, was it beneficial for you at that time?
It was
or do you think if you were thrown into the ringer,
yep,
and see the operators and like, hey, you have to put out these fires in this restaurant, would you have learned better there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I would have been able to take the amount of money that culinary school cost me in student loans
and start a restaurant,
and go and use that money and travel for 2 years and just knock on the back door of Hattie B's, knock on the back door of, and because you can learn. I will submit to you that you can learn more sitting at a Waffle House, watching those people work, than you will in a lot of Michelin 3-star kitchens.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in the Michelin 3-star kitchens, you're going to see one thing over and over and over and over and over again.
Waffle House.
You watch that Waffle House, you're learning all kinds of stuff of how to be a great cook. Doesn't matter where. You're just learning how to be an efficient cook. And that's why I think people need to start in dish, because that's the area where you learn how to be organized, you learn how to be fast, you learn how to work on your own, you learn how to work with a team. All of those things are skills that transfer immediately. That's why so many great restaurants, you look at the line. I mean, I was always proud when we could look at a line and be like, started as a dishwasher.
I started as a dishwasher.
Yeah.
And
So
in my little culinary journey, I'm on the best side of culinary now. I get to review food.
yeah, and I just think the actual nuts and bolts of it, and then moving out of the house, like if you're a kid, when parents would come up and they say, my kid really wants to go to culinary school. So that's great. Maybe put it on hold for a year, kick them out of the house. They need to go get an apartment. They need to live on what they're making. And then they'll decide whether or not they really like actually being a cook or they like the idea of being a cook, because they're two totally different things.
Brian, now to you.
I don't disagree with anything Andy said. I mean, when I think about my own experience, all of the great things that came from it were the direct result of the environment that it put me in and the people that it put me around. And you could realize those same things in an environment where, to Andy's point, you're getting paid versus going into debt. There are so many great ecosystems that exist now that are, and I think more and more people now are less interested in David Copperfielding some magic that they like, right? Some idea that they hold some key that nobody else can ever have, and right, and are much more interested in sharing and teaching and coaching and developing and collaborating, right? I mean, and so because of that, you have effectively amazing little culinary schools happening organically in kitchens all over the place, and with coaches and operators like Andy and his teams, and the coaches and operators that we try to develop too at Hattie B's, that can essentially turn all of our square footage into areas where you can learn something today and better yourself today. That said, I had an incredible experience in culinary school, and in my own story, I can't imagine how the dominoes fell. A lot of dominoes fell because of that, but it was a pretty, as I thought about it relative to what Andy was saying just then, I can't help but realize that I was kind of in a magical place at a magical time, and it's not necessarily representative of your average culinary school experience day to day. But one thing that I have always felt, and I do think is still meaningful, is that if you are going to go to culinary school, and there's a lot of good that can come from it, 99% of it is the town that you're going to that culinary school in. And so, like, to your point of you think Nashville would be a fun place to build a culinary school, I happen to agree with you today. Because
10 years ago, no.
Right? Because there are so many, because it's all going to leapfrog you to what's next. And like, I don't want to pick on any particular town, but if you happen to go to a great culinary school in a town that doesn't have any further opportunities beyond that, then it's limited, because the amount of stuff you're able to put yourself in front of is just limited. So, if you're going to do it, go do it in a town where your opportunities to get involved in stuff early and late and off hours and just work yourself to the bone exist. That's how I flipped my rocks early on. But I do think fundamentally what Andy's saying is exactly right, and it's probably more of a burden than its net worth.
Yeah, and I think too, if you go to culinary school and think that you're just going to school, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You need to exhaust, if you're going and you're spending the money, exhaust every option. I got in trouble multiple times at CIA because I would try and steal the videotapes of chef demos so that I could take them and record them and have them for myself. But constantly working in any restaurant you can find while you're going to school. If you're just going to school
to tick a box,
you're going to do it. So much of what's happening is happening around you. And then to Brian's point, and this is something I wholeheartedly agree with, is it is all going to come down to relationships. You're going to remember the people that, like, I went to CIA with a wonderful chef who was on Top Chef, and she had all these restaurants. And so, having that relationship was great. So making sure that you're building those relationships, getting in the best restaurants where 10 years from now, you're going to lean on those people, 5 years or whatever, but finding that class of people, if you find it in school, great. I mean, it's the advantage of going to an Ivy League school. Like, there's a whole bunch of smart kids there.
It's the network. That's what you're paying for.
It's the network. It's not necessarily the 3 weeks of cuisines of Asia. The fact that a school feels like you can cover the cuisines of Asia in 3 weeks is preposterous.
Well, if you look at Indian food by itself, there's 25 different options of different cultures of Indian food. and you're like, okay, I didn't know this about North Indian food, but now they're adding this in South Indian food. Just Italy,
Nailed it. Yeah.
French, all different types of cuisines.
Yep.
And we've had operators on this show that are from Sicily, and it's a way different method than from Naples.
Sure.
They're using maybe more fats. They're using a different type of oils. Like it's just a whole different type of thing. Okay, so with both of that in mind, Brian, I know your background. You're born and raised here. Andy,
Yep.
What's your Nashville background? And after that, I want to get into the restaurant scene in Nashville as a whole.
Cool. So this will be a short one, right? I got here. My wife and I came to Nashville in 2013
Okay.
to open Josephine. Until that, I had spent my entire career between DC and New York City. I'm a Northeast kid. My wife is from Knoxville. And so in the time that we had been together, we had never traveled to Nashville. And when we moved, when we were making a decision to move here, it was right about the time that Nashville was starting to pop off. Husk had opened.
Yep.
Rolf and Daughters, Josh and Eric were getting a lot of good press at Catbird.
Because that was when Sean Brock was still with Husk.
And and he was still really Charleston. The one here was just opening, coming here. We were literally between moving to Napa or moving to Europe, and Nashville won. And it won.
Huge.
It won because of what we both felt like, and neither of us are very spiritual people this way, but there was definitely, I still remember pulling in and driving down 12 South for the first time, and it was a rainy Wednesday. And the street, not packed like it is now, but it was packed. There was an energy to the city that we just felt like is where we needed to be.
So 12 South 2013, Urban Grub would have been in existence. Portland Brew would have been there. Frothy would have been there.
Burger Up was there.
Burger Up, Mafiosa's. That's pretty much it. Not the Piece. The Piece was a little bit after, I think.
Yeah, 12 South Taproom. But Piece was definitely a couple years after.
Okay, so you're looking at that landscape.
Yeah, and there was an energy to the city as a whole. And the other thing, frankly, that we were looking for was we were looking for the big cranes, which there were a lot at that
big
time.
Cranes, yeah.
And we knew that the big cranes equaled a lot of investment going into the city. And
because that's when the Music City Center opened. Mm-hmm. That was the main economic driver for our growth.
Yeah. So
great job, Nashville, for building that.
For sure. And then coffee and bread culture were the others. So it was cranes, coffee, and bread culture were the things that we were really looking for. Great independent coffee shops.
Which Nashville at that time had fantastic places.
Barista Parlor, Crema. And that's where we zeroed in there.
Ongo Java.
Sure. And then some type of a bread culture, because my thesis was that the type of people who are responding to a great bread culture are also responding to good food culture.
Remind me at that time who would have been like the leader in the bread culture.
Provence was here.
Yep.
Dozen came pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And those were
there were some Middle Eastern Kurdish bakers at that time.
Honestly,
especially in South Nashville.
Nolensville Road was what 100% sealed the deal for us. Because we were coming from the Northeast Corridor where it was within.
Did you have a previous restaurant in New York or DC or
outside
Josephine?
of Philadelphia?
Okay.
Yeah. So
like Buckhead, more like
Central Pennsylvania, like Amish country.
Yeah. Like Lancaster.
Gettysburg.
Yeah. Lancaster. There's a in Lancaster County. There's a train that's converted to a restaurant.
Yep. Strasburg.
I love that place. Yep. And then the largest smorgasbord in the world is in Lancaster. I grew up in Scranton. Yeah. So I knew that area very well. So, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Okay.
So, we got down here and the ability to be around multiple ethnicities, the ability to be around a lot of different cultures was very important to me. I didn't want to lose that when we moved. And we hadn't explored Nolensville Road until the last day that we were here. As we were looking around, we went down Nolensville Road and just saw all of what Nolensville Road is from a food standpoint.
Did you stop at any places on that trip? Did you stop at any places on Nolensville? It just
didn't need to. Just open the windows. Yep. I mean, you can
smell everything. You can smell Ethiopian. You can smell Cuban. You can smell everything.
Yeah. And so that was a big a big driver for us coming here.
So then you opened Josephine. Josephine was a farm to table-esque concept, correct?
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing you learned operating that restaurant?
I think the biggest thing, and I learned and leaned into, I think I'm going to equate them for the purposes of this, was how important it was. Restaurants to me are just four walls, just four walls and stuff. But the people actually breathe the life and personality into those places: dishwasher, cooks, waiters, bartenders, all of it. And so how important that was. I could come up with the craziest dish in the world and think that it's, the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. And it literally doesn't matter if we're not making the connection through the people, both the people that work there every day and the people that come in. So how much I very much coming up didn't care. I cared about perfection on the plate, period. Once the plate left the kitchen, I was done. If it left the kitchen and it was perfect, then the dining room part was taken care of. That was the younger mentality that I had.
Okay.
Coming here and having an open kitchen and being able to have that connection with the guests, but then also realizing that you could go to a restaurant and you could have the meal of your life. And if you have poor service, you're probably not going to go back.
Oh, that's me all the time. I remember there's multiple times I brought clients to Josephine, and I remember the hospitality. That's what I walked away with every time.
And that's always the thing that we tried to, and my wife was such a huge part of that.
And I remember that fried chicken sandwich too. That thing was fire. Yeah.
Was that, we can do everything that we can on the plate, but the hospitality and the service buys us so much latitude on the food, because if you make that connection with someone, and I feel very lucky, the amount of time that we had, you could have come to Josephine in that 10-year span, and there's a possibility that you saw the same waiter.
I had the same waiter
10 years.
6 times. I think. Yeah.
And so that was the thing for me, how important the personal aspect was, and how important the people were. If you have the people right, the rest of it take care of itself. I think that's something you guys live by too.
What was a failure that you experienced operating Josephine? That another operator can learn from.
I don't know. I mean, I always like to look at failures as opportunities, which I think probably sounds cheesy.
That's how I look at it too. But yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for us was, because in that 10-year span, our guests changed. And so learning to be ahead of that, I think, is important.
When you say guest change, was it a demographics thing? Was it financial guest? Like, what was that change?
I think it was a demographic thing for sure. And then also in 2013, 2014 was or 2012 even, that was a super big sweet spot for Nashville food. I mean, that's when
all the chefs were saying, like, hey, we're setting our roots here.
That's it.
That was the pinnacle moment, that 4-year time span.
Right.
If that didn't happen, Nashville would have not become the food mecca we are.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. And so in that 10-year time,
that's when Hattie B started.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that story here in a second too.
404, Husk,
55 South around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot
Grays on Main in Franklin.
Pinewood started then. So I think the big thing is watching that time span and watching our demographic shift. I feel like we could have done a better job of trying to peek around the corner a little bit and see what was next. But I mean, I also feel like we were pretty good about looking at each other and being pretty honest with, hey, I think we need to tweak this a little bit, because I can't tell you how happy it makes me to hear that you went so many times and you left and just had, I don't even care that you remember what you had. I just care that you had a great experience.
Oh yeah. I felt taken care of. I felt like I was eating with clients, but it felt like I was eating with family. And every time I've gone to Josephine, I was eating with clients. And, but I always walked away. I'm like, man, that was a really good experience. Yeah, the food was great. But like I walked away and my clients would say it. And the clients I was representing at that time are Fortune 500 CEOs, executive teams.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, that was a good experience. And then they'll text me a week later, like, thanks for bringing us to Josephine. That's what I remember most about the restaurant is that experience.
Yeah.
Brian, let's get to you. Hattie B started in 2013. 2012. Off by a year. How long have you been the executive chef over Hattie B's?
I don't know. I don't carry business cards, so I'm not exactly sure. I've worn a lot of hats over the years, and that's one of the great things about our little family business is we all, over time, have had so many ways to try to contribute to this great thing. But I've been at Hattie B since 2015, shortly after the second one opened in West Nashville.
So Charlotte location.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And started at Hattie B's. There wasn't a headquarters at that time. There were just 2 locations. And so I had the chance to join the Midtown team at the original location. And so spent my first a little over a year, I think, it's hard to remember exactly, but they're at Midtown. And I can't remember exactly how long I was there, but I can remember details about at least 60 Sundays or 60 Saturdays. Like I can remember a lot of moments. And it was really incredible to me. The guest experience that
2015, 2016, Hattie B's Midtown would have those lines massively down the road.
Yeah.
And you're serving probably 500 customers in a day.
A lot more than that.
Maybe more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember those massive lines.
Yes.
Yeah. And I waited a long time in those massive lines.
Yeah. And you know, it was just such a magical thing. I mean, those were really hard days and hard hours, but you didn't feel it. The level of energy in that room, as Andy was talking about, was just off the chart. I mean, you know, I worked at some really incredible places, and I've never felt energy ever like in those 1,300 square feet, regardless of the cost per plate or the amount of the finishes on the wall or anything else. So yeah, that's when I came on board, and then after about a year or year and a half or so there at the store. Thankfully, Nick Sr. and Jr., who are the father and son who founded Hattie B's. By the way, Hattie's a real
a real person.
Yeah, multi-generations of Hattie's actually in the Bishop family. But that's when they decided to form the first headquarters team. And luckily, very gratefully, I was able to be a part of that. And so really kind of from that point, I was able to participate in kind of a lot of things that were food and development and training. But
so underneath both of the brands, Hattie B's and Strategic. Andy, go ahead and name some of the strategic concepts.
So
I know most of them. I don't
probably
know
our biggest one right now is Friends in Low Places.
That's what I was thinking.
Broadway.
And then Pinewood Social.
Pinewood Social we actually
just got
sold
rid of. Okay.
recently.
Okay.
But there are all the chef-driven places: Locust, Catbird Seat, Bastion, Patterson House, Henrietta Red. Then we have some locations at the airport: Titans Press Box and Kitty Hawk. Also, there's a really great Voodoo Donuts kind of tucked in the back corner.
Oh,
there.
You guys, I didn't
it's
realize
a lot of fun
Voodoo.
to work with them as well. So yeah, there's a lot. And then we have baseball with the Bandbox, which coming up on 10 years of the Bandbox this spring. So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, there's a few.
How do you guys maintain quality control at Hattie B's, where it is a multiple location, multiple state concept?
Mm-hmm.
How do you maintain quality control?
Constant gentle pressure. I didn't come up with that. That's a Thomas Kellerism, but it's the truth. It's just constant gentle pressure. Even at a place as simple as Hattie B's, right? We got 5 cuts of chicken, 7 sides, 2 desserts. It is still full of details that require precision and attention to them, and a little bit of love in your approach to the decisions that you make relative to them. So, it all dominoes, right? Like you've got to have great systems in place. You've got to know what the goal is. But you can't just like make great systems and then put them out there. It really, 98% of it is creating the right environment for those things to be successful. And then having a fantastic team who really is dedicated to hitting those things on an hourly, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week basis. I mean, we're only as good as the very last person who came into the very last store, right? It doesn't matter how many locations we have or, how many times we can win best of or anything else, right? It only matters if that very last person at any of our locations, got our very best. And so that's really where the focus is. But it's hard. I mean, like, we can say all that, but it's just hard. It's the hardest thing about what we do.
Yeah, I have nothing further, Your Honor. Whatever he just said, put it on the wall.
Yeah. But I do want to ask this. Strategic has some of the highest caliber of restaurants in your portfolio in the city. Catbird Seat, great example. Patterson House, great example. And I know it's bringing in these great chefs and everything, but how do you maintain, because some of these restaurants are coming up to 10-year anniversaries.
Sure.
Like, how do you maintain that quality control with such a saturated market right now?
I mean, I really fully believe it's everything that he just said. I mean, you have to start with the people and then providing the right environment. And I have nothing to do with it. I mean, the people who are in those restaurants, the chefs in those restaurants, and the constant general pressure is 100% it. But it's me cultivating those relationships, cultivating people, giving them a great stage to work on and to just do really great creative things. That's it. I mean, he couldn't have said it any better. And so, but the constant, I get it. I mean, there were times where year 7 at Josephine and in that 10-year span that we were open, COVID happened to all of us. And so you do have to think, like, how is what we did in 2014 still relevant? Is it still something that's going to get you out of bed in the morning? And again, I hate to harp on it too much, but I will because it's true. People are different every day of the week, and that is the most infuriating thing, and it's also the greatest gift. So that when you go in, yes, it's the 5 different cuts of chicken, 7 sides, 2 desserts, but the people that you're working with, and the thing that I love the most is we can put systems in place, and I love it when there are people that say, what about this? Like, can we do it this way? I'm done. Like, I'm out. My day's over. I feel like I've accomplished the world. I've just written the encyclopedia. So keeping that fire going, and that's why turnover, I think sometimes turnover can be a great thing because it keeps things fresh. So yeah, it's a 100% of people business that happens to be around food.
What advice would both of you give with your culinary backgrounds to somebody that's opening a new concept here in Nashville?
Culinary backgrounds or real estate backgrounds?
I would say both. Real estate is it's fascinating to me, and I look at what happened to Josephine, what happened to Mafiosos. I think both of those concepts were priced out of that area. And I you can speak into that because you're the one who was operating that. Yeah. But like Mafiosos, for example, I think they were in that building for 27 years. Did they ever, and I don't know, did they have the conversation about owning the building instead of renting? And so that's a big conversation piece in the restaurant world here.
I think, I don't want to jump into this too quickly, but my biggest thing would be look at the burbs. If someone came into me and they said, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Nashville and I'd like to do concept X. Look at
what's happening in Smyrna right now. Yeah. There's this incredible bakery that just opened a year ago, Viva La Fresca. They took over an old donut shop. So it was a second-gen restaurant that they took over. They made it into this bakery. I was there filming recently, and within a 30-minute period, 45 people came into this bakery. All was spending $15 to $20 per ticket, and I was stopped like about 14, 15 times in a 30-minute period. And I'm like, okay, this place is very popular with my audience. But Columbia, Gold's Deli, Georgetown at Gold's Deli. Look up at Gallatin, La Veneta with Chef Laura from Italy, from Milan. And so there's a lot of chefs that are coming here, and that's a great piece of advice. Look at the burbs. Yeah. Would you have anything?
I mean, I'm not a real estate expert. You know, Andy would be able to speak more to that. No, I mean, regardless of what you're going to open in Nashville, I mean, what I can't wait to find out is how does it feel? Because we're a feeling place.
From a consumer standpoint or from an operational standpoint, from
a consumer standpoint, as a guest,
Okay.
how does it feel?
Could you break that down a little bit more?
I mean, I think the best place, Nashville to me is such it's so neat that we have the blessing of being able to be from Nashville, you know, like, because Nashville is such a high value on experience. So it's such a wonderfully organic dovetail for a place like us.
Yeah.
But like, it's awesome to see an environment in Nashville and so many other places where folks don't have to come in and do everything. They can kind of open a sustainable place that focuses on that thing that they're real passionate about. And so often the net result of that is it just feels really great in the room or the people that they've assembled. But there's also plenty of new places that open that seem to have forgotten about the net feels. Don't pass the vibe check. It's like, man, there's some cool finishes. The build out's sweet, or dang, that line is slick, or look at that equipment, or that menu's got a lot of poetry, but like, where's the real story, or how does it feel? Or, you know, I think to be a Nashville restaurant, regardless of what's on the menu, it's got to feel great.
What are your guys' thoughts on hospitality groups coming in from Chicago, New York, Dallas, LA, opening these concepts? There's a couple that have come to the city. They've opened and they closed in a year. Especially downtown. Downtown's a very hard market to get into, very expensive. But what are your thoughts on all these hospitality groups? And I even heard of hospitality groups coming in from London and Paris that are starting to open concepts here and starting to bring things here. There's that chef from Italy is opening the sandwich shop here, and his lines in Rome right now are absolutely insane. Nashville has become a food mecca. So what are your thoughts on these hospitality groups coming into this gold mine of this mecca?
Andy probably has better thoughts on it than I do. I mean, it's so weird. Like, I'm a poor authority on this because, like, I spend my hours almost entirely when in Nashville at work or at home. And so, like, in a way, I feel somewhat disconnected from, like, the up-to-the-minute inner workings of the latest ruminations of what's happening in the Nashville scene. Like, I don't know. I'm not. You two guys are such a better authority on that than I am.
25 restaurants are set to open in the next 8 weeks of this recording of this podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, give or take.
That's wild. I'm glad. I mean, to me, that says we need to continue to make sure our focus is on making sure what we're doing is the best. Because there's so many. How do you keep up if we're trying to, like, track along pace inflation, so to speak? Like, I don't know. God bless you if you've got the mental bandwidth to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest thought to all that is make it awesome. Like, if you're going to come into Nashville, make it awesome, and Nashville will embrace you. But don't phone it in. Like,
well, people have.
We got some good reference points here. People are savvy.
If you want to phone it in, it's going to be a problem. But I think the whole rising tides raises all ships. Like, I think if a culinary person says to you, I'm not really interested in somebody coming in at a very high level with great hospitality and great food, they're lying to you, because the reality of it is we want Nashville to be the best food city in the world.
Of course.
So bring it. If you're coming from Paris with your restaurant group, awesome. We're here to welcome you with open arms. Be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, but the whole phone it in thing, I think people can see that from a mile away. But this idea that chefs who are, I mean, in 2012, I was a chef who didn't live in Nashville, you know? And when Josephine opened, we were that big, ugly building that they're building on 12 South. You know, that was actually our closing message to the entire team at Josephine was that, there were buildings being built across the street where there's away luggage. And well, that was us 10 years earlier, you know? So come in, embrace Nashville, be awesome, and Nashville's good. Like, I think we want that. Like, we want awesome stuff here because we want to be that place. Michelin should come to Nashville because,
oh, hands down,
you know,
hands down.
But we've got to embrace that.
Michelin's really interesting. I found this out in the last year. The city, as a city, has to pay Michelin to be a part of their program.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't know if the public just knows openly.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting concept in theory. Okay, with all of that in mind, we are very spoiled in the food scene in Nashville. Extremely spoiled. I go to other cities across the United States and I'm like, wow, this food is terrible.
Well, which cities exactly?
That's rough, man. Yeah,
I've been to a few cities.
There's some pretty tasty food out there, man.
Ohio, some Ohio cities, terrible food.
Oh boy.
Kentucky, some cities, really terrible food.
Yeah.
Good food up there too, though.
There's some good food. Yeah. Like when you get into Heaven Hill, like Three Brothers Kitchen on the distillery property.
Shoot, even
it's the best banana.
Even a bag full of Farrell burgers.
Entire life.
Yeah. Couple bucks a piece, boy. Give me 3 or 4 of them. There's nothing fancy about it, but there's nothing wrong with it either.
Fancy.
Yeah.
But when you go to these other markets and you're like, oh, I'm very spoiled in Nashville. What is Nashville doing? And it could be a hospitality thing plus a quality of food. What separates Nashville in the hospitality world compared to other markets? And you could talk probably into this because you guys are in so many different states.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it's funny because people who are operating here and cooking here now come from all over the place, you know, not just like from Nashville. But I think there's still a lot of this sense in Nashville of like, and I mean, of like just the amount of love that's in the process overall, right? The amount of tenderness that still exists in it. Like the amount of like what your Southern mom and grandma or auntie would have given you growing up. That still exists here, regardless of like how much the population shifts or how much transplanting there is. I think there's still that tenderness and that sensitivity and kind of warm welcoming to it that keeps it from all just becoming an ultra lounge. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's enough patina there in terms of like the texture of the emotion that's all wrapped up in it.
Where did the inspiration for you to get into the hospitality industry come from?
I mean, for me, it was a funny ride. So I grew up here, actually where we're taping. My dad played that piano in that sanctuary. But I grew up, Dad was a musician here and Mom cooked in the church. And so I was around food and music growing up. And my whole goal growing up as a kid in Nashville was to be a professional musician like Dad. I grew up either hanging out in the church kitchen with Mom or in the studio with Dad after school. And so I worked towards the goal of doing that, got accepted to Berkeley in Boston, which was the dream, right? And then I couldn't afford to go. And so at the time I was like, well, to heck with all of it, right? My dreams of being a musician are shattered. But at the time, shortly before my grandfather had passed and left me some stocks, and I got interested in stocks and finances. So I said, I'm going to go to University of Tennessee and just do finance, forget music. I wasn't even thinking about food at the time, right? But I was thinking about music and how upset I was about it. So, but then I was working in restaurants here. I got a fake ID actually to work on the line at the Capitol Grill in the Hermitage Hotel when I was younger, and then ended up working at the Copper Cellar, this place on Cumberland Ave downstairs. This old dark place kind of felt like Capitol Grill. But what I found through all of that, as I was going to school for finance, scraping by cooking, was that everything I loved about music, the process, the learning your scales so you can one day solo, and also the emotional exchange with the consumer of it, the instant gratification that's there, the instant feedback loop that exists in music, all the things that drew me to it were there in food. And it was, had I not grown up here wanting to be a musician all those years, I don't think I would have ever made that connection between food and music. And so it was in Knoxville, going to school for finance, and I was like, hold up, eureka moment. This is not what I want to do at all. In fact, food is delivering to me what I've loved in music. And so that was where I made the pivot and was lucky enough to be able to go to culinary school. And so were it not for Nashville and music and that in my childhood, I would have never found the same things in food. And I didn't inspire this in Hattie B's, right? Nick and Junior and Senior inspired this, but that's the whole reason we exist, is to have this wonderfully delicious, crunchy, sometimes spicy way to put that love on you, to put the shepherding arms around you and make you feel the way we hope you feel when you leave. But that's all born of Nashville. That's all born of this hug plus a high five thing that Nashville is emotionally. And I hope that we're a good conduit for that.
Nashville, a hug plus a high five.
You know, that's what we're trying to be a conduit for. You know, is that way that you feel when you come here. Hopefully.
Andy, what inspired you to get into the hospitality food side of things?
Well, I didn't realize this, but I got into the Eastman School out of high school as a musician and didn't go. So we have another thing in common. I so I have a degree in music and did not just. I was going to be a professional tuba player, and there are only so many of those slots.
Yeah, I got a scholarship to go to Tech for tuba.
Yeah.
But I thought I would never find love or get married, so I didn't.
You never find love.
I still have my mirror phone in the garage.
Yeah, I sold mine to go to
crazy.
culinary school.
Wild.
But I
What a small world Nashville is.
I just got to a point where I didn't love music enough. I did it because I was good at it. And in high school, if you're good at something, you just do it because that's kind of your thing.
Yeah.
And then when I got to college, I was still pretty good at it, but I was surrounded by people who actually loved it. Like they could sit, like how I told you,
like talk about music theory and all this stuff for
they're
hours.
listening to albums of all these recordings the same way that I was stealing VHS tapes at CIA of guys cooking.
Okay.
And there was a job to me. Like I had to sit there and trudge through listening to these recordings. So I got done. My parents were both brilliant public school teachers. And when I got through, realized the professional music thing wasn't going to work for me, I decided to go back and I was going to be a school teacher. I was going to do what my parents did and loved and were really great at. And in order to pay for it, I started working in restaurants. I started as a waiter, which anyone who knows me is unfathomable that I would be a waiter. And was not great because I was always in the kitchen. Like I was fascinated by everything that was happening in the kitchen. It was all centered around, like I grew up playing every team sport you can imagine. And the kitchen was just a team sport centered around ingredients.
Yeah.
And once I got in, because of the music background, restaurants were the exact same thing. I was used to playing in churches on Easter. I was used to, holidays were spent as a musician. That's when you made your money. Weekends, the same thing. So it didn't faze me to be working in restaurants. It was just the same schedule. And then I got into it and realized what that felt. Those kids that I watched and kind of probably unfortunately made fun of sitting in the listening library in college, just digging into these classical records. I realized what that felt like when I got into a kitchen. And I was like, oh, I get it. This is what it's like to, it doesn't matter that, I'm good at, I love what I'm doing right now. And I love the people that are surrounding me. Cause this was, I got into kitchens around sort of the beginning of Anthony Bourdain being, the guy. Yep. So that was a thing, but I want to go back to your question of why people come to Nashville. And I'm hoping that it's still this way, but I think Nashville's a city for dreamers.
It is.
And, you're going to come here and you're going to make it. Yeah. If you're a musician, if you're...
It may just take you 10 years.
Yeah. Well, it could take... It might not happen.
Yeah.
But the ingredients are all there. The table's set for dreamers to come here from a business standpoint, for artists to come here, for cooks to come here and to really make their way. And the whole, hug and a high five thing... I remember the first time that Karen and I went and ate at City House, and Tandy came out, didn't know, he knew that we were in the restaurant business. We hadn't even moved here yet. Knew that we were in the restaurant business. We talked a little, he came out and talked to us like, I didn't know him from anyone. And I just felt so at home and so welcome. And I think that is something that as a restaurateurs and cooks and chefs, and I think we need to continue to remember that and perpetuate it because we need all those cool inputs. We need people coming here. We want that. And we want them to feel great when they do it. So, if you're a dreamer, come to Nashville. Like, this is the place for you.
What, with you growing up in the Northeast, it's a different, and you living in New York City, Brian, I think you could both answer this. There's a different level of hospitality out of New York than anywhere else in the world. It's in your face. It's aggressive. But when you go to Little Italy, when you go to the Amish country in Lancaster, it's a different type of hospitality than Southern hospitality. How do you guys think this Southern hospitality still affects Nashville today? And because of all these restaurant groups coming here with these concepts from New York, Chicago, and in London and Paris, is the hospitality scene going to change?
There's room for plenty of different flavors of it. I mean, we don't have a patent on the only great hospitality,
Well,
our flavor is unique.
Personally, I would say Italians have the best hospitality in the world.
Well,
besides Egyptians are very, very hospitable people.
Well, I don't know. You got your measuring stick of ultimate hospitalitarianism? I don't know. You're talking about genetic predispositions here.
Yeah.
Get a little dicey. I think ultimately it's exciting to be able to experience all those different wrinkles and ripples of the way you can feel via a hospitable exchange at so many of the places that are doing a great job at it here now.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels great to get good old-fashioned Southern hospitality, because if you're from the South, then that connects to the stories that are most tingly to you. But maybe if you're from, it's all relative to what stories are taking up more space in your own hard drive, and what things have the tightest connections to you emotionally. So I connect to Southern hospitality because it reminds me of a lot. If you grew up in New York, you may have the same nostalgic experience with that and find this to be a little more foreign or campy or, I don't know, composed or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the larger, like the bigger breadth of experiences that we can provide for people, the better. There was a point in time, a bunch of years ago, where it wasn't uncommon for someone to say, "Oh man, another Southern restaurant's opening." Another farm to table restaurant's opening.
Yeah.
That was a pretty common thing. Like these, restaurant openings would happen and people would just sort of shake their head and be like, "Oh, I wish we had X." Well, we're getting X. And so great. And so the more different experiences that we can provide for people, that's the thing about, Nashville is a great global city. You should be able to get a lot of different things. I mean, just go to the airport, like the amount of different planes that are coming in and out of this wonderful airport, and more to come, is fantastic for us. So I think the more that we can provide these experiences, and you always want to have, if you want to get, great Southern fried chicken, that's where you can go get it. But if you want to get a more New York experience, well, we've got that too.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time,
we didn't have it.
Yeah, but for a long time we didn't have a great sandwich culture.
Now we have a massive sandwich culture.
100%. For a long time we didn't have
a good Japanese culture.
We didn't have a great pizza culture.
Yeah,
Joey's House of Pizza, which was awesome. It was dinner and a show.
They were the best.
Now there are legitimately 5 places that we could get in a fist fight about whether or not it's the best pizza. That wasn't possible.
Which would be a fun series to do.
Ago.
We fist fight over the food.
I would love that. Yeah. But,
Hugel sticks.
Yeah.
Nashville always seems to answer the call. When there's now it's like, oh, another Japanese restaurant's going to open. But before I was like, man, we really need a Japanese restaurant. It's happening. Like it's right in front of us. So embracing what a insane how lucky we are to have those things happen, I think is something we should be doing.
So that goes back to the question I was asking when we go to other markets. There's no other case study that I know of. Like New York, Chicago, LA, they have this. Houston, they have this because they're so large and metropolitans. There's no other city of our size, maybe Charlotte, maybe Raleigh, that is getting the amount of chefs and ethnic food from around the world.
Austin?
Portland?
Austin, Portland, yeah.
Portland, both Portlands,
actually. Yeah.
Maine and Oregon.
Okay. But it still feels different in Nashville. And maybe that's just because
I
we're
agree
in
with
this
that.
space.
I mean, I think Portland maybe happened
10 years
Different
ago.
sequence,
before.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timing's
Yeah,
a little
Different
different.
chronology.
Yeah.
And there's definitely something that, Austin is a really great example too, that, there's a cuisine that they're built around and then everything else is filling in the periphery. But I think that Nashville is filling in the periphery at a greater rate of expansion than maybe some of those other cities are. To your point.
Where do you see the culinary space in 5 years in Nashville?
I find it generally hard to predict into the future
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, there's so much
That's
uncertainty.
a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, I will go back to
Do you think we'll be a Michelin star city at that point? Or do we have? I know some operators that are opening Michelin star concepts here, but they won't be able to ever be ranked as a Michelin star because we don't have that as a city.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I don't know.
Then are
'Cause
they Michelin
chef-
star concepts?
No, but not really. It's just they're opening that concept.
They're
So,
opening-
like
so
Chef
more
John George, like
concepts with ambition.
yes, Yolan, for example.
I mean, I'll go back to, I think 5 years from now that we see more of an expansion of the food that was in this ring of downtown that goes
to the burbs.
We'll
to the
follow the
burbs.
population out.
Yeah.
For sure.
There are some killer restaurants in Dixon, Cookeville. There's a barbecue restaurant that I've been wanting to feature a little bit north of Cookeville. They're the only ones in town doing beef ribs, or in this area, within 2-hour area. They're doing beef ribs every Friday. So there's some really unique concepts coming to Middle Tennessee. If a dreamer were to come here, what other piece of advice would you give them in the culinary space? Besides the real estate thing, besides moving to the burbs, like, what piece of advice would you give them?
Well, if we're talking about a dreamer who's coming to Nashville for typical Nashville reasons, I would say step 1, come to Nashville. It's a great place to be. Step 2, come apply at Hattie B's. Text Hattie to 25000 because we would love nothing more than to lose you to an eventual record contract. We will celebrate that win with you, and we'll be here to shepherd you all along the way. So, yeah, Nashville's full of, I think, great places that want to leapfrog you, as Andy said. So you're in a great place to do that. And I think Nashville's a place, too, that will reward effort exponentially when paired with great attitude.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what level of dreamer you think you're mentioning is coming to. If it's a food dreamer and they're a kid and they're in their early 20s, I think the answer is one thing. If they're a dreamer with some experience and they want to open a restaurant, I think the answer is totally different.
Let's do both answers.
Cool. I would go back to my original statement of, the high school kid. Make a list of the 5 best restaurants. Talk to people. Do your research online. The internet was, when I was coming up, wasn't the gift that it is, although the gift and curse, I guess, that it is now. Go online and find what, go to your Instagram. Find what are the great restaurants in town and knock on their back door. So, I can't think of a place that's going to tell you no.
Especially on the employment rate with the turnover and
So, but that being said, you could find yourself in a real middling, whelming type of situation pretty easily because people are in such a need.
Yeah. Find those places. Be very honest with the chefs there about what you're, where you came from, what you're looking to do, that you want to learn, and put your head down, work hard.
Also, find your Andy. You might just be looking at the restaurant name on paper, like at the number of traffic or the prestige it has or the awards that it's won. But like I knew in 30 seconds of meeting Nick Sr. and Jr. that I wanted to never work anywhere but Hattie B's ever again, right? So no matter what stage of your career you're on, you might be looking at restaurant titles or something you think will play best on your resume in the future. None of that matters as much as finding the person who believes in you and will help lead you down that path. So find your Andy, no matter what the name of his restaurant is or how. You'll know when you find your people, when you find your petri dish, where your likelihood of your rate of growth can multiply.
Yeah. What are some concepts in town that you guys are enjoying? Like that you take your families to?
Bastion, Catbird Seat, Henrietta Red.
Yeah. Outside of Strategic, outside of Hattie B's, where are you guys? Are you eating at your house? Or are you guys where are you supporting? Once a month, twice a month.
I can't say Hattie B's. Well, that's not that.
I can say Hattie B's.
I really like Midnight Oil Pizza. I think it's awesome.
I've not been
there.
yet.
We go there quite a bit.
Is it a Detroit style or a New York style?
It is an awesome style. Now it's New York style.
Okay.
And it's a cool bar. It's a cool vibe. It not anywhere close to our house. It is in my small little brain, Michelin worthy because it is always a special trip for us to go. Okay. And, we have to drive quite a bit to get there. I love it. So, I mean,
what's your favorite pizza on the menu?
Just pepperoni.
Okay.
It's also super economical. We always get our bell and like, did they forget to put something on there? It's great. It's one of my favorite places.
I will make sure to put that on the list, Brian.
Okay. So, my wife and I, Misty, our son Jack is a senior at UTC in Chattanooga. So it's just the two of us a lot now. He was actually home this weekend. We took a little
Chattanooga has a great food scene.
Well,
Tony's.
Easy Bistro.
Yeah, Easy Bistro. Tony's.
We love it. There's also there's a little Korean place that's there now too. A little hole in the wall that we love that is so good. They do.
Is it on the main street?
Yeah.
I know on the left I know exactly what we're talking about. Yep.
Anyway, But he was actually just in town this weekend, and he recently turned 21. And so we've been slowly checking off the lists of places that we've never sat at together before as adults. And so Misty was out with girlfriends for a birthday party the other night, and so I let Jack choose. And so he checked a few off his list, which was we started at the bar at Rolf and Daughters and got a little bit of fresh pasta and a little something there, and then went over to the bar at he's obsessed with oysters, and so since we were right there, we just jumped over to the bar at Optimist and smashed some oysters and some more oysters and some more oysters, and then but he also loves Pilato. He loves to go sit at the bar at Pilato. So these days, I'm typically going where Jack wants to go.
Pilato's great. Anthony with his concepts, a fantastic job.
But I will say, I've been on I get on these little side quests, and lately I've been for the last like 2 months, I've been on a little side quest. And when I say side quest, I mean like at home and whatever little off hours I can find. I try to fill with more minutia. It's just how my brain works. But I love Chicago style tavern pizza.
So 312, the tavern.
Well, like so growing up, we went to Chicago a lot. It was like our second home. My mom's best friend lived there. And so this super thin crust pizza, that and Detroit style freak are my two favorites. But I've been obsessed with trying to perfect cracker crust tavern style pizza. And I love its anthropology too. I love the story of it. I love the way it's built and the specific toppings. But I've been on a major
we actually had the owners of 312 on recently. The episode's coming out soon. We talk about the entire history of cracker crust pizza and deep dish. Like we go deep into like the food science of each.
I'm not a deep dish guy, but I love cracker crust. And so
I love both.
I have to say this has been kind of all consuming lately. And so
is that going to be on the Hattie B's menu soon?
No, not at all. It's just me. So my wife and I have been eating a lot of pizza lately as I've been perfecting it. In fact, tonight will be my latest. I got 5 days on my latest batch in the fridge, so tonight's the first run. So
nice, very cool.
We eat at home a lot.
Well, yeah, I do too, but I eat everywhere.
The problem is I end up working late, and so by the time I get out of work, it's
like you don't want to go eat anywhere.
There's just no time left in the day.
Is there any type of concept right now that Nashville needs?
I feel like we're both going to keep that close to the vest.
I know, because you guys are probably opening it. I know. For me, I wish.
What do you think? Because you have your finger on the pulse of where those gaps really would be right now. Taking notes under the table.
I think we're really missing a South African experience. Maybe a little bit Eastern African. We have Gojo. We have a couple more Middle Eastern type concepts, but like South African, I think we're really missing the ball on that. Australian is here with hearts, with two hands. Red Perch technically was a Australian themed, but they just announced shutting down. South African, like Johannesburg type area, I think we're missing that cuisine. I think we're missing some Indian cuisine in the market, and then there's a lot of cuisine in the Norwegian areas that we're missing, and that's more like reindeer inspired type stuff. Like really, like we're missing a really good meat market, where you can get more of those gamey type of meats. There's certain places you can get those one-offs, but like the Chef and I was a great example of being able to get those meats. Catbird Seat is a great example of being able to get those meats. But for more of the average day consumer, it's harder to. And then I think Nashville's also missing a great Italian market. There's a lot of Italian operators here now, and but I think like a New York City, Florence, Italy, Italian market, we're truly missing that. That may change. We were part of some conversations. We may be bringing an Italian market to Nashville. I'm trying to get all the families together and build out this like warehouse concept.
That sounds dicey.
Hey,
not for nothing.
The mob is a great case study. And do you guys know how the mafia started in Italy?
Listen,
It started over lemons. Who had the best lemons and oranges in Sicily? That's how the mob family started, and so it was over food.
That is that the children's book version of the way that started?
No, it started in Sicily. It started, lemons. Well, when they say painting houses, that doesn't mean they're painting houses. So, But the mob history in food is actually a very interesting topic, but that's for another time.
I got to experience a little bit of that at Le Cirque back in the day in New York. It was cool with the guys coming through the back door, greasing everybody up.
Oh, yeah.
That was a real thing.
Did that experience is here in Nashville a little bit, but it's a little bit more hidden.
Hey.
Mob history of Nashville is very interesting. Capone was running through here. There's still some effects of it. So any mobsters listening, let's talk.
Hope they like fried chicken.
Hey,
Hot chicken,
yeah.
spicy.
So I think those are some of the conceptually things that we're missing.
Listen, I think if you have to go out to the edges of like not enough reindeer, we're doing pretty good around here. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's true. We could blot everywhere on the map. But if we're out to Norway and South Africa, not to diminish those at all, but
I think like
sounds
we're
like we
doing
got some pretty good coverage.
like there's some really good Indian concepts now. More Chinese, like actual like true Chinese concepts would be cool. Where it's not Americanized Chinese food. And I know that's coming. Like we just had that one place open from New York. Choi, yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that's coming. So, and then probably like, have you guys been to Italy?
To the country of Italy?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Have you been to Florence and have you had the street food in like the street food in Florence and in Naples?
Naples, yes. Florence, no.
Those type of street food concepts would kill it in this market. Some Italian operators are doing those street foods well, but an entire concept just on Italian sandwiches, and I know that's coming. It's coming. That's the thing I like the way you said earlier. Everything is going to be here with the global market that we are. So we're getting those things. I don't foresee some of those concepts coming here for another 5 years. And at that point, real estate's going to be insane. And okay, we'll finish with this question.
We don't have to finish.
Yeah.
Finish with some fun questions. Come on.
No. This is a fun
Do a
question.
speed round.
Yeah. I like speed round. Not food.
Not food. What attractions would you guys if you were to describe your perfect day in Nashville? How would you describe your perfect day in Nashville?
Dang near. No, we had some beautiful weather this weekend. Yeah, 70
We
in
only
a
got
park.
yesterday, so that was a perfect
70 in a
day.
park with the dog.
What
or
park?
on the bike. Huh?
What park?
Well, because of where we live, Beeman more often, but when we lived out west, it was Warner.
Okay.
But yeah, either on the bike with friends or out with the dog on a day like we had. We've had some beautiful weather recently.
Yeah.
Spring and fall weather when it's just right on in Middle Tennessee is hard to beat.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. Andy, your perfect day in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, mine's going to be selfish and maybe not necessarily Nashville based. As like, I'd be on a golf course somewhere, probably Hermitage.
He's a really good golfer.
If anyone ever wanted to take me to the golf club at Tennessee, I would play there too.
It's interesting because the last 2 episodes that we've recorded in the studio, we ended with golf.
Yeah, perfect.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't have much in that space. Gaylord Springs is a nice golf course.
I live. My backyard looks at it, but
they're getting the Live Golf Tournament most likely.
Are they?
And it's going to be insane in this part of Nashville.
Gaylord?
Yeah, Gaylord Springs. I don't know if I was supposed to.
I'm going to sell
I
this
don't know
some
if I was
parking
supposed to.
spots on the front
I
yard.
don't know if I was supposed to reveal that, but that's a possibility. They may be getting that contract. So,
Hattie B's food truck right in front of my house.
but that's a great idea. Hattie B's food truck anytime in Donaldson's a great idea. If somebody were to start a concept here, this is the last question. Should they go with the pop-up route and do collaborations with other kitchens to start getting placements?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good model. We've talked about that like 2 episodes ago.
Man, I love collab.
Yeah.
We just did this one, a couple weeks
the
ago
place.
in Dallas with Shugs.
Yeah.
Yes. What a great time we live in where we're all much more interested in working together than working against each other.
Yeah.
It's hard enough without all that.
All right. One last plug for the event that you guys are doing as a collaboration.
Yes. Come, buy tickets. They're still available. If you're a company or a corporation or you just got some money burn a hole in your pocket, even if you can't come for the date, you can contribute. This is such a meaningful organization that really does a lot to benefit the folks that keep all of our organizations going and feed you. I mean, Hattie B's exists to give, and I know, so does Andy's organization, and this is such a wonderful opportunity to give back to folks who commit their lives to giving and serving. And creating those amazing experiences in Nashville. So no matter what level you're able to participate in, show up, big or small. Maybe your company wants to buy some seats and give them away. however you want to participate, it'll all be super duper meaningful.
We may or may not light a disco ball on fire.
Listen, it is going to be seriously fun. We're gonna have a good
I'm just
time.
thinking of the glass shattering and would it?
Listen,
how are
we're-
you going to light this on fire?
We're going to have tableside. We're going to have torches. We're going to have unexpected musical moments.
Are you guys performing the music while you're cooking?
Well, there will be plenty of performance.
That would
art.
be an interesting concept.
It's a loose
barbershop
definition
quartet
these days.
why they're cooking.
Now, nobody said singing per se.
Okay.
But it will
Disco
be
on
artful.
fire. All right. Well, make sure to get some tickets. Thank you guys for listening to the Explore Nash podcast.